You know that feeling of being stuck? Like you're somehow falling behind everyone else? Well, what if that feeling isn't actually your fault? What if it's just a symptom of living in a world that's changing way faster than our brains ever evolved to handle? The path forward isn't about just trying harder. It's about understanding the invisible systems, the architecture that shapes your choices every single day. So let's explore that architecture together. And this quote, this really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. The idea that maybe the struggles you're facing, they don't come from a place of weakness. They come from a fundamental misunderstanding of how growth actually works in the real world. So here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at what we're calling the modern trap. Then we'll dive into your invisible walls, the things holding you back that you might not even see. After that, we'll get into the identity engine, which is a real game changer. And we'll wrap up by talking about what it really means to build a life, not just a moment. All right, let's dive into our first section, the modern trap. This is all about understanding the hidden forces shaping your world, because that feeling of being stuck, it's not a personal failure. It's more like you're playing a brand new game, but you've been given the instruction manual for a game that's thousands of years old. Okay, so we're living in what some people call the age of acceleration. And that's really just a way of saying the world is moving way faster than our brains are built to handle. Think about it. Our biology changes over thousands of years, right? But technology changes almost instantly. A great example of this is from neuroscience. We know the part of your brain that's in charge of long-term planning and impulse control, the prefrontal cortex. Well, it isn't fully mature until you're in your mid-20s. But society, it expects you to have it all figured out as a teenager. That's a huge biological mismatch, and it sets us up for a lot of internal conflict. And this conflict leads us right to a huge modern myth, the idea of motivation. We're always told, just get motivated. But what even is motivation? It's really just a temporary emotional spark, a chemical feeling. And feelings fade, especially under pressure. Systems, though, are totally different. They're structural. Think of motivation as a firework. It's exciting, but it's gone in a flash. A system is the car itself. It's the thing that'll keep carrying you forward, day in and day out, long after that spark is gone. So, if systems are so great, why is it so hard to build them? Well, it comes down to this idea of survival through stability. For most of human history, change was dangerous. A new path, a new food source, it could mean trouble. Our brains are literally wired to resist change to keep us safe. So when you try to do something new, even something good for you, like a new habit, your brain's little alarm system, the amygdala, can see that as a threat. That feeling of procrastination or discomfort, it's not you being lazy, it's not a character flaw, it's just your ancient brain doing the job it evolves to do, keep you stable and therefore safe. Okay, so we've got these outside pressures from the modern world and this ancient resistance inside our own heads. Now, in our next section, let's talk about your invisible walls, the unseen barriers that are built from this exact conflict. One of the biggest of these walls is what I call the feeling problem. We're taught to follow our feelings, right? Wait until you feel inspired to write or feel energized to work out. But here's the thing. Feelings are really, really unreliable narrators. How you feel can be changed by whether you're tired, hungry, or stressed. The science, especially from fields like behavioral activation, shows we have it completely backward. Action comes first. The feeling of motivation comes after you start. You don't wait for confidence to act. You act, and that's what builds the confidence. And then there's the attention crisis. Look, your attention is your most valuable asset. It's the currency of your life. And right now, we are living in a world that has been engineered from the ground up to capture and monetize it. A mind that's constantly pulled in a million directions, it just can't build anything meaningful. It can't stick with a hard problem. So learning to protect your focus, to carve out that quiet space for deep work, it's not just a nice skill to have anymore. It's a superpower. This chart, this explains so much about why people quit. We think progress should look like a straight line, always going up. But in reality, it almost never does. There's this long, flat period, the quiet phase. It feels like you're doing all this work and nothing is happening. But you are growing. It's just incubating, happening beneath the surface. Because we can't see it, we think we're failing, and we give up, often right before that massive upward swing. It's exactly like planting bamboo. You water it for years and see nothing, and then suddenly it shoots up 90 feet in a few weeks. That quiet phase is where the real work happens. And what makes that quiet phase almost unbearable? The comparison spiral. See, social media has put comparison on steroids. It's not something you do once in a while, it's a constant feed. But the game is rigged from the start. You're comparing your own behind-the-scenes footage, all the messy takes, the mistakes, the frustrating moments, to someone else's perfectly edited, color-graded highlight reel. It is not a fair fight. It creates this constant nagging feeling that you're not good enough, and it's all based on a complete illusion. So, okay, we've talked about the traps and the walls. The question is, how do we get past them? Well, it takes a really fundamental shift in how we think about change. And that brings us to our third section, the identity engine. This is about moving from focusing on what you do to focusing on who you are. Just look at the difference in language here. On one side, you have, I am trying to be a writer. That's all about effort. It relies on willpower, which we all know runs out. On the other side, you have, I am a writer. That's about identity. It relies on belief. And here's the secret. Your brain is a belief-confirming machine. It wants to prove itself right. So when you start to believe you are a certain type of person, your brain will start looking for ways to act in line with that belief. And this is probably the single most important idea we'll cover. We think we have to build good habits to someday become the person we want to be. But it's actually the other way around. Real, lasting change doesn't start with your habits. It starts with your identity. You decide who you want to be first, and then the habits that support that identity, they start to feel natural. You're not forcing yourself anymore. You're just acting in alignment with who you believe you are. So how do you do this? How do you build a new identity? It's not about some giant, life-altering event. It's actually much smaller and much more powerful. You build it with tiny actions. You define the person you want to become, and then you start casting votes for that identity. Reading one page is a vote for, I am a reader. Studying for 10 minutes is a vote for, I am a learner. Each one of these small actions is like a piece of evidence, an identity proof that you present to your own brain. And over time, the evidence becomes overwhelming. And that brings us to our final section, which is really about the long game, building a life, not a moment. This is where we zoom out and put everything into perspective, letting go of that need for instant results and learning to embrace the true nature of growth. I love this metaphor because it's so true. Our culture is obsessed with highlight reels, with overnight success, but that's not how a meaningful life is built. Life isn't a race to a finish line. It's much more like tending a garden. You plant seeds, you nurture them, you show up every day, and you have to trust the process. You can't force a flower to bloom faster. And the most beautiful part is, the real reward isn't just the final product, it's the person you become through the simple, daily act of tending to your garden. So let's put it all together. Here's your new framework for thinking about growth. First, build systems so you don't have to rely on motivation. Second, act based on your values, not your fleeting feelings. Third, learn to trust the quiet phase, knowing that your efforts are compounding under the surface. Fourth, rewrite your identity, one small action at a time. Fifth, stop comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. And finally, embrace the idea that real growth is slow, and it is never a straight line. You know, greatness is never about one single moment of triumph. It's about the accumulation of thousands of small, quiet choices that nobody else ever sees. So, the question I'll leave you with is this. What small action will you take today? What one small vote can you cast to reinforce the person you truly want to become?